Everyone. Welcome to this month's ZoomTrak meeting. We
Recording
have a
in
full
progress.
program today. And close this off. Four topics today, four presenters. Our first topic is on the Civil War in N-scale, and Joel Salmons will talk to us about his experiences there and the information he's developed and the sources he has. After that, Ken Izzo with KenRay Models is going to talk a little bit about his company and what he has to offer the N-scale community. After that, Ken Harstine will talk about what he did in installing a decoder in an ancient H1244 that was not decoder ready, how he was able to successfully do that. And then finally, we're going to talk about passenger yards and what they can be. We always think about just that as a place to park a train, but there's a lot more there that you can do. We'll discuss those opportunities. So if everybody's ready, is there anything that I need to do first, Bruce or John? Are we ready to rock and roll? All right, Joel, you're up.
All right, we have the chart up now, or the slide up of Union Street.
Yes, you've got your video. It's up.
I was just double checking because it overwhelms me. If anybody has questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat. I'll come back to you afterwards. I'm not going to monitor the chat because I'm sitting here by myself right now. All right, so we're going to be talking about N-scale railroad rolling stock. And first off, you'll notice I split the word rail and road because I'm in the Civil War. And during the Civil War, those were two separate words. And the picture you're looking at is sort of something we'll talk about a couple of times tonight, and I'll get a little bit more in depth about how you do it. This is rail fanning, and this is rail fanning November 1862, and you're in the city of Alexandria, and you're at the U.S. Army's Quartermaster Office in Alexandria, which is a railroad station. Eventually, it ended up under Chesapeake, but it's the Alexandria, Loudon, and Hampshire Terminal. And if you look on the right side of the station building, right next to the platform, you'll see a line of flat cars. And on that line of flat cars are a whole bunch of boats, and these are the pontoon boats. The date is late November 1862. The pontoon boats are sitting in Alexandria on the house track at the old station. Meanwhile, in Fredericksburg, moving up on the Rappahannock River is General Ambrose Burnside, and he needs those pontoon boats. And they get there a little bit late, and that battle does not turn out well. But you will notice that that is almost a unit train on the right-hand side. It's standard flat cars, many of which were remarked into the U.S. Military Railroad. And the train is full of pontoons. So we'll come back to rail fanning inside photographs shortly. The first resource I want to hand you is probably the best, and that is the Civil War Railroads Historical Society's location in Groups IO, and it's Civil War Railroads. We are a NMRA significant special interest group on Civil War railroading. We're scale agnostic, but we have principally N-scalers and O-scalers and a few O-scalers inside the group and some other scales, and then a lot of just basic historians. So from this period, you have a really good resource there, and questions asked on that site will generally get you taken to the right location to get the details on what you're doing. The layout there shown is my layout. So you are getting a brief layout tour. That's my portable layout. It's the city of Alexandria in 1862, showing the Union Street switching area. All right. The organization about 8 years ago decided that regardless of scale, we would put together a series of T-Track modules, which we can bring because, face it, we're a niche group of railroaders. And when we get together, we have some T-Track modules that we can put together. I have a selection of the modules here with me as the T-Track coordinator, and I'll take those to train shows. The last train show I went to was, I guess, the St. Louis NMRA, that we had the layout set up in the SIG room, not over at the National Train Show. In T-Track, we operate under specialty modules because a lot of our modules only have a single track. And that's more because of the operations during that period. This scene particularly depicts Pohick Creek and a military field hospital. And it'll point out several types of models that we'll talk about. The tents on this for the field hospital come from a company called Paper Terrain in Philadelphia. They are produced in N-scale, HO scale, and several wargaming scales. Scott is a Civil War historian. The tents are correct. The car on the right is a 3D print of a modernized 1858 Pennsylvania coach. A little bit more about it. The hospital car next to it is from MiniTrix, and the locomotive is the Atlas 440. The two-wheeled ambulances in the back are from a British company called Pendraken. And the overall scene is something that happened, but it did happen in two different places. The Pohick Creek, there's some excellent shots of it that were taken during the war. So I have a good idea about the bridge and those particular areas. And this was just the first T-Track module I built 8 years ago to sort of demonstrate how the T-Track modules would work. When you get into esoteric parts of N-scale, you run into some real challenges in finding parts. Fortunately, during the sesquicentennial, microtrains came out with a line of cars, trucks, and they have a wonderful Lincoln pin coupler, which is actually more of like two little clamps going together. That coupler works very well, and when the cars are hooked together, it looks great. I have made working N-scale cars with Lincoln pin couplers using really small links from some fine chain, but boy, howdy, you cannot operate using those. That's just really for a contest model. The trucks that MiniTrix makes are quite accurate for the standard U.S. military railroad design without brakes. The other main source of Civil War era trucks is Eric's model, who runs a company called Panamint Models. And Eric Cox makes about 30 3D print trucks. His trucks are, the trucks are designed to take microtrains or Fox Valley wheel sets. And trust me, I use the metal wheel sets a lot in the Civil War era cars, because these are small. It's really hard to weight the cars to operate. The one thing I have learned in using the 3D prints is I saturate the trucks with super glue, with thin super glue, before I start to put the wheels in. The thin super glue works really good at tightening up that kind of open matrix that the 3D printing process uses to make the trucks. So I saturate those, and I've had really good luck with the trucks surviving after that. Some of these are going on 5 years of operating on my layout. Oops. All right. This is another rail fanning shot. This rail fanning shot was shot by Captain Andrew Russell. It is taken from the cupola of the roundhouse in Alexandria that belonged to the Orange in Alexandria, and then went on to the Southern Railroad. This shot is kind of interesting because it is easy to locate it. The two-story townhouse in the center still stands, so you know exactly where he was when he took the shot. And it provides a lot of information on passenger cars, boxcars, and locomotives. And the passenger cars inside here are all a relative basic. They're pretty much like a copy of a Pennsylvania car, probably because the gentleman who was making them came from the Pennsylvania Railroad. These were built in U.S. military railroad shops. And the first two cars, if you're a rail fan up close, and I'll, once again, teasing a bit, we'll get a little chance to go kind of look a little bit closer at some photographs. Both have hospital car on them. And so they were used as hospital trains to move soldiers from the battlefield to the larger hospital complexes, of which Alexandria was a hospital complex. There were hospitals all over DC, and then going up the East Coast as they evacuated the wounded back up. Very complicated system. This is also provides you with an overview list of the companies making the equipment. Microtrains, Brawa, which is a German company, and they make a very accurate American-style passenger car, which is based off of the Wittenberg Railroad, purchasing an American car in the 1850s, copying it, and then producing 100 or so of these cars, which they kept in service until after the turn of the 20th century. So that car is available. I have shots of that. Craftsman kits are available from Republic Locomotive Works. He produces an excellent line of cars, a little more about those. And then you have 3D printed equipment available on Shapeways from Panamint, DMS Engineering. And then there is Outland, which is a separate company that does 3D printed cars. Now then, we kind of get into manufacturers of cargo and people. Cargo is produced by Microtrains. They have made all sorts of different loads for their Civil War era cars. You have hay loads, you have box loads to go on the flat cars, and you have various other configurations to go on the cars of different things. The rustic rails is another source of equipment. They are owned by Fun and Games in St. Louis, and they produce a line of wagons and of people not in uniform appropriate to this era. Pendraken makes a line of civilians and wagons. Baggage Train makes a line of wagons. Republic Loco Works makes all sorts of things you can use on cars. And there's all sorts of things on Shapeway, Outland, and Paper Terrain. Paper Terrain, matter of fact, I have a clinic car that is a Republic Loco car that is made up to be one of the cars here in the Alexandria Rail Yard. And Paper Terrain made excellent little paper pontoon boats to go on the cars. So Microtrains makes 3-period freight cars, a flat, a box, and a caboose. As you can see, the flat car is probably the most versatile car. Matter of fact, it's really versatile because in 2020, they produced the armored car trains, the armored cars from the Civil War. I think most of these cars I've seen from the photographic evidence were used on the Baltimore and Ohio, as opposed to the U.S. military railroad. And they were used on the, essentially to protect trains on the main stem running through what is now West Virginia and across the Potomac and along in the Shenandoah area, where you had a lot of Confederate sympathizers and a lot of Confederate raiders that were preying on the railroad. The boxcar is a pretty stock U.S. military railroad car. In looking at photographs, you will see hundreds of these cars. They're somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 of them in the war. The microtrains last fall were released in their Civil War era a lumbering train. And they lettered it for the Union Pacific. I re-lettered my set to the U.S. Military Railroad, and that is based on this wonderful scene that was drawn during the Civil War of a stationary engine logging on the City Point and Army line along the from Aquia Landing in Grant's movement towards Richmond. So you can see there was a pretty large industrial item, and you'll notice how carefully they located the telegraph poles next to the railroad. This is the Brower passenger car. They make two window configurations and a baggage car. The one thing that I did have to do to these cars to really kind of more Americanize it, and this is showing them when they, a fresh set that I just got out of the box, is to replace the handrails on the end with American style handrails. I use Republic Loco Works brass handrails for that. These are some 3D prints. These are Eric Cox's. You have the B&O pot hopper, which you may have seen at the B&O Museum, if you made it there. The upper right is a 3D print of a B&O boxcar that the U.S. Military Railroad bought about 50 of. The center left picture is a B&O car from the 1850s with the without the clear story. Below that is a Winans boxcar. Winans of Camelback fame designed that particular car. And to the right are a series of coal gondolas. This is a close-up of the passenger of the clear story car. It's an excellent car. It looks very similar to the Lincoln car. It's a little bit shorter, but that type of car was coming into extensive use during the Civil War. And then this is Pan American's boxcars. It's kind of interesting because I just got located some decals for the U.S. Military Railroad from Microscale. The car in the center was a painting experiment that I did in which I just used stain. And I think it came out very effective on the 3D print. This shows the interior of Pan American's cars. They are complete. They have complete interiors. They're a little bit challenging to put weight in. So I run a strip of weight down between the seats and the center because the 3D print is very, very light. These cars come with trucks, and they come with working Lincoln pin couplers. Those I use the Microtrains couplers to do that. This is Cullen Creek, which produces an alternative roof for the Microtrains car. DMS Engineering produces a complete line of cars for the U.S. Military Railroad on shapeways. And then Republic has a huge line of cars. Haven't really talked, and I'll kind of address those now. The Adams Express car. They do a stock car open roof, a stock car covering roof, and a caboose. On our T-track modules, we really have to mess up the Kaido track so that it actually looks like it's closer to the Civil War. And so this is just a thing of where you really dirty it and you kind of work it up. This is my real quick clinic. This is rail fanning the 1860s. To go rail fanning in the 1860s, I go to the Library of Congress And I go to their Civil War collection and I pull up one of their wonderful prints. This is a shot of Fort Ellsworth. As I start to go into that, because I download the TIG file, which is about 100 megs, I notice that below Ellsworth, which is on Shutters Hill in Alexandria, the George Washington Memorial, Masonic George Washington Memorial, is on the top of that hill today. And I noticed there was a car in the background. The wonderful thing about Culloden is you can keep blowing these pictures up. And lo and behold, what did I find? A car called a U.S. Military Railroad wrecking car. We had gone to the archives and had pulled out a series of their car documentation on the counts of cars. And this is the second of document. The first document had listed boxcars, flat cars, cabooses. It had a baggage car. Then it had stock passenger cars and stock cars. And there was that one caboose. The next inventory that we pulled and copied from September 1862 suddenly said the baggage car was now a wrecking car. So that was probably one of the first purpose-built wrecking cars. The flat car in front has a laid-down crane on it, and the H-shaped thing on the top of that, in fact, is the ramp used to put wheels up and put them on flat cars as they cleaned up wrecks. In this shot right here, we're back to kind of rail fanning in the Civil War. Another shot from the cupola. And this one is looking towards where my house is on that ridge in the far background when I lived in Alexandria. So at this time, if there are any questions.
We're going to have to hold the questions. 2 questions at the end of the ZoomTrak meeting. But we're going to move right on. Ken, if you're ready. Next up is Ken Izzo with KenRay Models, and he's got stuff to show you. So go ahead, Ken.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing today? Give me a second while I get my screen set up here. Everybody see that?
Yeah, it's perfect. You're good.
Okay. My name's Ken Izzo. My wife and I own KenRay Models. We're just a little garage manufacturer. Originally, we started in Western Pennsylvania in Sharpsville in 2005. We started with 4 flat cars and a single steel mill car. And this is kind of a brief history of, the milestones for us. 2006, we released a Borden's butter dish milk car. 2007, we actually started, we didn't own a 3D printer, but we were using commercial printers to get masters done. We purchased a pad printer, so all of our cars are printed in-house. 2008, unfortunately, Ray passed away from cancer, and my wife and I took over the business at that point. 2012, we introduced modern military vehicles. 2016, we moved from Western PA to Houston, Texas. 2018, we released our first Humvee, which we have 3 variants available now. 4th is going to be coming out probably within the next 6 weeks. 2019, we bought our own 3D printer, so we're no longer tied to commercial printers. And actually, I just bought a 4th printer this morning. 2020, we started releasing civilian vehicles, of which we have 8 available now. And this year, we had a big release. We're doing a limited run of Marine Corps vehicles on Navy flat cars. And we released about 20 US. So we have, this is our basic product lines. So we have 40-foot flat cars with military vehicle loads. We also sell the vehicles individually. We have modern military vehicles that we sell individually. We have the Borden's Butter Dish Milk Car, which is our only piece of rolling stock right now. Civilian vehicles, and then we also have steel mill cars and detail kits, detail parts, and then just general detail parts. So these are some examples of our military flat car loads, and I just put basically our most popular products here on the screen. We have probably twice as many as what's shown here altogether. But as you can see, we run a pretty wide variety of, different vehicles, armored vehicles, soft skin. We have, like the Higgins boat. We're also working on another similar landing craft that was used during the war. And we're constantly adding to this array of products. These are Navy flat cars with Navy vehicles. And again, we kind of pick suitable subjects, vehicles that the Navy would have used. These are the individual, a sampling of the individual vehicles that we have available. And it's being not only a model railroader, but a military modeler, I can't help but, I want to model every kind of truck that the Army ever used in World War II, because, if one's good, a lot more is better. Individual Navy vehicles. And we also just released our first German vehicle last year. This is a Tiger 1. I'm working on the second product in this line, which will be a Panther tank, and I hope I'll have that ready by the end of the year. These are the modern vehicles that we offer. The 5 here at the top we offer in both olive drab and sand, but they're available in woodland camo and desert camo as well. And then here at the bottom are soft skin. We have an M35 available in sand and OD green, along with our 3 Hummer variants, armament carrier, 2-man cargo, and a 4-man pickup. And the next one that will be available is the field. It's actually, they used it for a frontline ambulance. And that should be out in about 6 weeks. I'm making production molds for that currently. This is our Borden's car, very popular. Actually just spent 2 weeks putting together a big run of cars, because this is one of those kind of cars, if you get an order for one, all of a sudden I'll get an order for 5 or 6 of them, and they just seem to come in bunches. But this is a very popular car. We offer it in both the blue and white paint scheme, which was the original scheme in the 30s, and then also the silver scheme, which was like the early 50s, and this is also available as a kit. These are our civilian vehicles, mostly 70s, 80s muscle cars, because I'm also kind of fond of muscle cars. But, we trying to offer some pickup trucks, have a Ford Econoline van, and as time permits, I'm going to keep adding to this product line. But it's a lot of work to get civilian vehicles out, because there isn't very many that are nice square boxes like military vehicles are. This is our sample of our steel mill cars. We have ingot and ingot mold cars, hot ingot cars, 150-ton bottle car, 2 active slag cars, and then, you know, like a common practice in a steel mill is equipment aged, they throw it in a deadline and end up being, you know, just rusty and, you know, grimy. So we're offering one of the thimble slag cars in that manner. We have a number of different slab cars. We also offer 50-foot distressed gondolas, lettered for the P&LE and the Union Railroad. And I'm actually working on a bulkhead gondola that we'll offer with a pipe load. Again, hopefully by the end of the year, that'll be available. These are some of our steel mill kits that are available. An overhead crane, a complete crane with the, you know, runway and everything. We have a crane cab so that if you want to convert, you know, like an HO scale crane to N scale, you know, it's an easy way to do that. Pit furnace kit, which is where kind of like the front end of everything that happens in shaping steel. We have ladles, oil house, which is just kind of a nice generic brick building. A lot of the kits we deal with are rolling mill parts. We have rolls for a 4-high stand that's available commercially from CMP shops. And this is actually in entry and exit tables for the CMP roll stand. And again, just, you know, machinery detail parts for inside of a steel mill. More detail parts for steel mill J hooks. These are, you know, foundry parts you'd see in a foundry, you know, a lot of 3 different size of coils. Although right now I'm converting these from pewter into resin parts, slabs, ingots, you know, anything you would need to detail a steel mill. General purpose detail parts, crates, boxes, barrels, oil drums, you know, a lot of just little hard to find parts that kind of fill out seams. These are the new releases that we just had in July. So you can see I've added quite a bit of new products, kind of taking advantage of not doing shows. This is the limited run Marine Corps vehicles on U.S. Navy flat cars. And the run's going to end when I run out of Model Masters paint, because I can't find the Marine Corps green anywhere else. So when the paint's gone, those cars are done. These are, you know, some more of what we're going to be releasing in the near future. Small brick industrial office building, more of the roll tables for the 4-high stands, stake deuce and a half with the canvas top removed, so it's an open stake truck, flatbed, tractor trailer semi. And then this is some of the custom work that I've done in the past. You know, we had a customer who wanted NATO 3-color camouflage. You know, if I can do it, you know, I'd be happy to do custom work for people. Had a customer who wanted a 9-inch long crane beam. So I ended up cutting up 4 crane beams, splicing them together for him. And then, you know, we had a customer who wanted, you know, more detail with a 105 artillery. You know, again, if it's something we could do, happy to do it. These are some of the projects that I'm working on. A 75-ton open hearth. This is a 200-foot steel stack chimney, which you'll be able to actually, this is in 5 different sections. So it can be anywhere from 120 to 200 feet high. So you can use it in multiple places, detailing a mill. 44-inch blooming mill. And then finally, as a way of saying thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk today, if you go to our website, you can use the coupon code ZoomTrak and receive a 10% discount at checkout, in addition to our free shipping promotion that we're running right now. So thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. If anybody has questions, you can hit me in the chat, and I'm going to turn it back over.
Thank you, Ken. I'll tell you, what I didn't confuse me, I guess most of your stuff is still pewter, is that right? Or are you converting things to rosin now?
We've slowly been converting the military vehicles from all pewter to having resin bodies and just pewter details, tracks, turrets, that sort of thing, to reduce the weight. And it's easier for me to cast in large quantities.
All right. Well, the thing I like about them is that my flat cars are heavy enough that I don't have any problem pushing them or pulling them.
Yeah, the flat cars are going to remain pewter castings. So because flat cars are notoriously hard to weight. So yes. We just kind of feel it's better to have them available as a pewter car and reduce the weight, reduce the weight of the vehicles. So.
Very good. Okay, well, if you release your screen 30-second stretch break, get the old knees stretched and circulation going before we start. We're doing it now because we're running a little long, and when we get back, Ken will be up. So let's stand for a second, and while we're doing that, we want to take this 30 seconds to talk a little bit about some of the things that NRail has to offer you. So Bruce, while we're stretching, if you want to take on that task. Bruce? You're muted, Bruce.
All right, I just want to bring up this. For those of you who haven't been to our website, if you go to the members section and you click over here, you will see we now have shirts that are available. If you click on here, this will take you to a site. Shirts Illustrated is doing some of our shirts. And we got in our poll that we just, you should have gotten an email for a poll. We're looking at adding some other items as well. And based on the results of that poll, we may add some things like patches and some other items. So make sure that you go ahead and take part in that. Again, on the website, if you put your cursor over members, it looks like there are only 4 options. There's actually a 5th one. If you just click on members, that will bring this up, and that'll give you a section here which has the link to this is a members only item. The store has a number of items, and you may want to check this out because store specials are listed right at the top, and so they will be changing month to month. Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. And
all right.
Steve, back to you.
Next up is Ken Harstine is going to talk about his experience installing Decoder. Ken, I'm going to ask you to be real careful on your time because we are running way long. Keep it to 10 minutes if you would, please.
Great, should be no problem. All right, so we need to do the share screen thing.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right. How do we start the share screen?
On the bottom, move your cursor down the bottom and you'll see a green thing.
Yeah, green thing, just click on that. And
all right, there we are. Let's drop it out of the.
Yep, that's it.
All right. Now click on your slideshow button, Ken, and you're ready to go. Right there.
Drawing a blank.
Nope, up there where
Zoom slideshow. There we are.
There you go.
I had it all set and then it dropped out. Okay, so here we are. So I've had a long time love affair with the MiniTrix H1244, and I put Sagami motors in them and all kinds of things. But ultimately, I found that my best solution so far is to take the Atlas S2 frame and put it under the MiniTrix chassis, and so that works pretty well. The only drawback is you can see a difference in the trucks, but because of the way they're shaded, you don't really see it when you're looking at it anyway. The main thing is you need to load the sound files for the appropriate engine into the sound file on the ESU, and for that, I don't think there's any way around getting the ESU lock programmer, which is what I have, and which means basically I've committed myself largely to ESU because invested in that. But you know, I really like their stuff, so it hasn't been a bad deal for me. So the first thing you need to do is establish what decoder you've got. If you're talking generically, you need to find out, okay, what is inside this engine that I'm going to use its chassis for, because the ESU decoders in there are custom to that particular locomotive, because you don't know what they are generically. So I downloaded it into the ESU programmer, and it says it's a Lock Sound Direct Micro. So when I go to the ESU page, that's the one that I need to download. So on ESU, they've got a Fairbanks Morse 6-cylinder file, and so I downloaded that, and in the download process, they ask you which particular one you want. And of course, now I knew I wanted the Select Micro, so I downloaded that. Next process is you need to load that into your locomotive. So you put your locomotive on the tracks that are attached to the ESU module, and load the file, the sound file, which is basically a complete decoder file that you've just downloaded. And then you take that, and so there's a couple things here. This one here would be what you would do if you were just programming the decoder. This is the one we're doing, which is load the sound file. And so you click on that, and this is what you get. So even with the ESU decoder programmer, which is way faster than trying to do it through conventional decoding methods, you're looking at a 30-minute operation here. But it does it, and then you're done. Is that it? Yeah, that's it. So that's what's involved. Then you go back in and you set all the parameters for specific things like you want, like choosing the horn style and the bell style, and however it is that you set your lights up, things like that. So that's really it, I think. Any questions?
Well, we'll hold the questions for later.
All right. You can put them in the chat if you want, and I'll try to answer them while things are going on.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Ken, if you release your screen share.
Okay.
All right. And now I'm going to talk to you all for a few minutes about passenger yard operations. It's like I've never done this before. Okay, so I have to kind of go from my script on this instead of just free thinking, because if I don't, the slides get out of order from my brain. So if you bear with me, I won't be looking at the thing. I'm going to be looking down here at my stuff. It's not that I don't want to look at your faces, but so passenger yards, they're not just a parking lot. A prototypical passenger yard complex has just as much activity as a real freight yard. To design, build, and operate a passenger yard complex, you need to know what facilities are needed and how those facilities are used. There's a lot more than just building a terminal and sticking on a few tracks. So I'm going to show you a sample and scale layout that's built in such a way that it can fit and connect with the T-track layout, with the N-track layout. And once you see all the things you can do, the idea is for you to pick and choose among those what you can do to fit the space you have. So riding on a passenger train is probably an experience most people remember about a railroad. Above all else, that experience leaves a lasting memory of an individual's personal interaction with trains. Now, unlike the frustration one feels when waiting for a slow-moving freight train to unblock the road, or the dreaded hassle of riding a jam-packed commuter train, the glamour and passion of the rails lies in the passenger train. Somebody's talking. Ken, turn your sound off. Charlie, somebody's got their sound on. Anyway, there are a lot of famous passenger trains you see on the railroads. Santa Fe Super Chief, Penske's Broadway Limited, Great Northern's Empire Builder, the IC Panama Limited, the SP's LAR, the New York Central 20th Century Limit, and the Zephyr. Those are just to name a few examples. Now, if you're a fan of passenger trains, you may have built or collected several nice ones, or have at least thought about it. If you do have some, the question is, what do you do with them? Well, for most people, there are two choices. You can put them on a shelf and display them, or you can put them on the tracks, make one trip around the layout, and then park them. You can get a terminal to stick them in, build a nice train station, but all that adds is a place to park the train. But there's a third option. You can operate it. Watch this. I learned how to do that. There are a variety of things to do. Now, the more space you have available, the better, but it's an interesting, enjoyable, and challenging, and rewarding, and nostalgic experience. Just like freight trains, passenger yards, I'm losing my place here, yes, have an origination site. They make car drops and pickups along their route, and they have a final destination. At the beginning of the route, the train must be assembled in a specific order from a variety of different types of cars, and at the end of the run, it must be broken down again, and each car must be thoroughly inspected, serviced, and made ready for the next trip. Different types of cars require special attention commensurate with their functions, but all must be kept clean and fully operational at all times. Remember that passenger trains are not only made up of coaches and sleepers, but also include observation and lounge cars, dining cars, front-end cars, baggage, mail, railway, RPO, and express freight. All these different things are there. Also, cars don't come just from your railroad. Individual railroads each owned most of their different cars they used to make up their passenger trains, but their trains also included cars owned and or operated by the Pullman Company and transfer cars from other railroads. Every car, whether it's owned by Pullman or a third party, requires frequent service and maintenance at a much higher level than freight cars. Railroads that ran passenger trains established or shared passenger car servicing facilities and stations at major points along their routes. Although some railroads built their own facilities, such as Pennsylvania Station in New York City or the Grand Central Terminal in New York City, more often passenger facilities were pooled by the railroads, such as St. Louis's Union Station, Chicago's Union Station, and I have to show you this from Chicago's Union Station since I'm a Purdue grad. The way it really should look. Now I'm going to show you some diagrams that depict a prototypical passenger terminal and service yard, and this will be used to demonstrate the many activities involved in passenger train operations. They can also serve as a benchmark for you to use in designing your own passenger train complex. First, let's examine the various design elements included in an operations-oriented, fully functional facility with the scope and size found in a large metropolitan area. Such a facility is usually located at or adjacent to the downtown area of the city it serves and has a coach yard nearby, but in a more industrial area that has less valuable real estate. Since the design represents service to a large hub city used by several railroads, it has a passenger terminal, stub passenger terminal facility rather than a pass-through station. It's a complex of 4 separate but coordinated operational areas: the terminal facility, the coach yard, the locomotive service yard, the ready yard, and the approach. And last, the throat, which connects all those. Now, this popular complex that you saw in that diagram is designed large enough to accommodate any and all features that would have been found in a passenger service yard during the heyday of the 1950s. It's designed in N scale and it's modular, and it can interface with N-Track, as I told you before. The approach area for real yards of this area had intricately woven terrible tangles of tracks, which double slip switches, crossovers, and 3-way switches. Although this type of complicated versatile track plan worked well in real life, it can cause problems, particularly in the modeling world when cars have to back through them. For that reason, the yard ladders in this design are simplified, sacrificing complexity and compaction in favor of a more trouble-free operation. So let's examine the layout plan so we can have a better understanding of the facilities, tasks, and personnel needed to conduct operations in a passenger yard complex. There's the picture again. The full complex layout design starts with the terminal and coach yards, which are side by side and have a 4-foot aisle between them. The throat area connects the 2 areas with the locomotive service area and the yard approach tracks. In N scale, this thing is, as pictured here, is about 40 feet long. The entire complex connects to the main line at a 90-degree curve of a junction module. Now, obviously, this design is flexible, and since this is the way I envision it to be, and if I ever built this thing, which I haven't, because I don't have the space or the money, you can imagine how many turnouts are involved in this thing. It's a pretty big deal. But it's a blueprint that you can use, and you can customize it to fit the space that you have. The terminal and coach yard areas can be shortened. The coach yard can be turned in any angle desired, and you can head off any way you want to. This is just something to give you some ideas. Let's look at the details of the passenger terminal area. This one is 16 feet long and it's 2.5 feet wide. It has 6 arrival departure tracks, 3 tracks for spotting early boarding and late disembarking sleeper cars. When Pullman came into town, if you were in a Pullman sleeper, you didn't have to get up to get off the train. You could wait till morning and wake up. And if you wanted to get the train that was leaving at midnight, you could get on at 6, go ahead and go to bed. The train would be there and it'd link it up later. That's the way it worked. There's a track for through cars. And there's each track is long enough to hold a 20-plus car train along with its head-in cars, engines, and has a 25-foot wide platform on each side, the entire length. Also, this is designed to put a train shed over, which is kind of neat. You can't operate with the train shed over, but when you're not operating, it really makes the whole thing look pretty neat. It protects it from inclement weather. That's why they were made, and that's why they used it. I'm going to pass through some of this. The terminal building itself is situated above the tracks and just short of the halfway point down the platform. This position minimizes the distance the passengers must walk in order to board their train. Stairs and escalators move passengers between the terminal and each of the track platforms. The RPO facilities in the top left corner. It has 3 covered loading unloading tracks, 1 ready track. Just down from that is the Railway Express Agency with 2 unloading tracks and 1 ready track. Now in this design, the coach yard is parallel but separate, and you've got to have a throat to get from one place to the other, and that's going to depend on how you lay this thing out, how that works. But let's move on to the coach yard. In this example, it's 16 feet long. There are 8 servicing tracks for railroad equipment, each with a 29 to 30 car capacity, plus 1 transfer track of equal length. 3 additional tracks provide for idle car and business storage. Platforms bracket each of the 8 service tracks with a 10-foot wide platform on one side for foot traffic and a 20-foot wide one on the other side to handle carts and other equipment. Steam, electricity, compressed air, and waste disposal ports are positioned along the narrow platform so each car can plug in as required. Now at the stub end of the service tracks is a large building that houses many of the varied trades need to support a passenger fleet. These departments include housekeeping, laundry, carpet, upholstering, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, HVAC, paint, and other services. They're all where needed. At the top left end of the yard is the coal-fired power plant that generates steam, electricity, compressed air for the entire complex. And there's a service track next to it for coal cars. The commissary provides all food services for all cars. Boasts a 520-foot platform that runs between the 2 servicing tracks. Each service track can hold 6 cars. Along the back side of the commissary building is a supply track for reefers and other cars carrying needed food stocks. And there's a track adjacent to the closest platform, which is used as a commissary ready track and has room to store up to 7 cars. The Pullman Company has their own 4-track area that's adjacent to the coach servicing tracks. This area contains a dormitory and locker room for porters, a linen and laundry building, a storehouse, 2 tracks, each with a 6-car capacity and paralleling a 500-foot long service platform, a siding on the back for laundry, I'm losing my place here. Anyway, there's the siding for loading and unloading supplies from box cars and the ready track with room for an 8-car capacity. Now, also at the bottom, there's the pit tracks. There's 3 tracks, 1 for inspection, 1 for repairs, and 1 for storage and other equipment. We'll move to the engine service facility where you have 2 pairs of switch engines that move cars from when they come into the thing, the engines are released, they come over and the switch engines pull the trains out, tear them apart, rebuild them as necessary. 2 tracks provide servicing for both diesel and fuel and all the other services. There's a siding for rail cars loaded with sand and other things, plus the storage for the cars, and also the car wash facility, which is for engines and cars in this particular case. Since the bottom end of the approach tracks become 2 legs of a Y, that's only one place in this whole thing where you need to do some special wiring and you have to have a reversing loop there. I'm going to pass through that. We'll talk about that more as needed. So let's start talking about how things actually progress. Step 1 is arrival. Let me back this up. When you arrive at a terminal, all trains must back in. Why? For 2 reasons. Number 1, let me get to where I'm supposed to be here. There we go. Why? Well, because diesel engines and steam locomotives create emissions, heat, noise, and they're dirty. And so that's why you keep them away from trains. That's why you back them in. The second part of the process is engine servicing. Once the train's parked and the passengers have departed, the engines are uncoupled from the rest of the train and they head to the locomotive service yard. There they receive fuel, coal, or whatever they need, water and sand, ash removal if it's on a steam locomotive. And the engines that require repairs or other service, they have to travel to a repair facility. That's usually not taken care of in the service yard for a passenger train. But once it's serviced, the locomotives are washed and then they're placed on one of their ready tracks until it's time to go. Head-in cars. It's a long, long thing about head-in cars. There's a lot to talk about, but you remember, besides people, passenger trains carry freight. Not only includes baggage, but most also mail and REA shipments. And once the engines are cut loose, a switch engine has to pull the baggage, mail, and REA cars and deliver them to their appropriate areas. Head-in cars can have anything, including elephants. A lot of the baggage is offloaded onto carts right away, but some stuff, the big stuff, has to go to the freight house to be taken care of. You should note that the REA was a legal monopoly and was required to carry any and all types of loads, including explosives and animals. Pullman specials. When a train has a scheduled arrival that occurs at night or in the wee hours of the morning, certain sleeper cars are designated for those passengers who want to complete their night's sleep before disembarking. A special track is usually designated as a parking place for those cars, and we've talked about that. We also have to transfer the rest of the train. Once everybody's embarked, you have to take it to the coach yard, and also return to the terminal to do the rest of its switching duties. Then you have to inspect the car. And I'm going to pass through this because we're running really long, but the cars are inspected, and if they need to be fixed, you have to take them to the fix shop. Then you've got to service them. They're sent to one of 3 areas where the ants swarm. Nearly all large facilities have had a Pullman company area where they had their own exclusive facilities and coach yard. All Pullman cars were sent to the Pullman tracks where they were serviced by Pullman personnel. All dining and lounge cars go to the commissary tracks where they're thoroughly cleaned and restocked with food, beverages, ice, condiments, linens, china, silverware, glassware, and most importantly, booze. The rest of the cars go to a designated service track where they are cleaned, repaired, and services. All these things you can do as part of operations in an operating layout on passenger trains. It's not just freight trains. Also, once you get them cleaned, you got to have a place to stick them. And then you got to put the train back together. And when you do, there's a specific order they go in, which they had to do. And then finally, you have to get the train back over to the station to get it ready for passengers to come on, and you have to transfer take the transfer track to move them back over. So there are that's it. So then there are also some auxiliary activities in the coach yard. You got a shuffle car between the commissary and Pullman areas, between the platform tracks and the ready tracks. You got to return repaired cars from the inspection area to the service area. And at the terminal, you got to shuffle the baggage, RPO, and REA cars to and from their work tracks. And you got to move empty sleepers to and from those Pullman tracks. So all that has to go. Now, plus there's other freight movements in the yard. Coal hoppers to the power plant, reefers to the commissary, flat and box cars with trucks, wheel sets, and parts for the car repair area. Tank cars with diesel and fuel oil, hoppers for sand and locomotive service. Box cars with supplies for Pullman, commissary, and general areas. All those are part of operating on in a yard. But let's look specifically at the operating process itself. Now, I've named this yard the Micropolis yard mainly because it's in scale, so it's micro. So, but it's not, it doesn't have to be incorporated into a larger layout, but it can be. But there must be a staging area for passenger trains. And if you do that, if you don't have it tied into another layout, then you would have to build some sort of a staging area underneath these modules that we'd already talked about. But that's something you can figure out. When you put all this together, it looks like it could take 5 people. 2-man terminal team, 2-man coach yard team, and a yard master. Or if you want to have 6, the yard master can be broken into 2 people, the operator and the hostler, who brings the trains out and back. So once you figure that out, where you want to do it, then you can put your staging yard wherever you want it to be. And then you got to figure out what we do next. So we've talked about all the understanding of service is required. We've given you that. You have the knowledge of the facilities that are needed. So you have all the information necessary to design, build, and operate your own passenger train complex. I know you're just waiting to do that, aren't you? So what now? Well, for most people, space limitations prohibit the construction of all this stuff that I've just shown you. So you have to pick and choose from a smorgasbord of details to develop the plan for your personal version of a passenger train servicing facility. Now, Don Murphy is a fellow down in South Lake, Texas, a suburb of Dallas, has done this in HO scale. And you can see in HO scale, he's got quite a nice little thing. You can see his main lines, his approach, his station, stub to station, servicing facilities on the left and the back there. If you can do that in HO, think what you can do in N. So what I'm suggesting to you is forget the display case. Design, build, and operate your version of an operations-oriented passenger yard complex. Again, you've got all this to choose from, to pick from. Pick the things you want. I even have designed storage cabinets so I can take it to a show with rolling wheels. One's a 2 foot by 8 foot cabinet. One's a 2 foot by 6 foot cabinet to hold all this stuff. I'm not going to repeat all these things, but what I'm going to tell you, all these things are there. But the key thing is, if you're interested in this, you can go to tulsa-neons.com, click on this link, and we will get this posted, and so you can get it if you're interested in it. It's all online on the Neons website. And if you're interested in doing that, this is a fun way, a whole new different way to look at operations instead of just a freight yard where you're classifying cars and building a train. And that's the 20-minute version of a 45-minute presentation. So
Can you drop that link into the chat?
Pardon me?
Can you drop that link into the chat?
I probably can if anybody knows to tell me how to do it.
Just copy and paste it.
All right, let's see.
Just bring up chat. In the meantime, I'm going to.
While we're getting ready for that, let me also tell you about next month's meeting. Next month is 9/11. It's an easy date to remember. 9/11/21, 20-year anniversary of a bad day. We have a short topic will be Lee Williams talking about how to operate a DC railroad with DCC.
Is that what I'm doing? I thought I was doing the healing.
You're doing, I don't, well,
Bruce, what did you want me to do?
We'll figure it out. Lee's got 2 presentations. He'll pick one of them. And his presentations are pretty good. He'll do a short topic for 10 minutes. Layout tour will be the Eastern End Lines layout, multi-club layout. John talked about a month or 2 ago about NTRAK 2.0. This will be that layout and how it works. And then our main speaker will be talking about the future of model railroad retailing. Richard Frazier, who used to work for Intermountain many years ago, has a very interesting take on where this industry is going. And it's a fantastic presentation. I think you all will really enjoy it. And vendor presentation will be one. We haven't nailed that down yet, but we will have one, and it'll be a great thing. I want to thank Joel and Ken and other Ken for their presentations today. And now we have questions or chat. I only see 2 chat comments. Any questions anybody wants to bring up?
I have a question for Mr. Gillette.
Go ahead.
I built something like this as N-Track modules, and I've been thinking about how to operate it. And what I thought of is you can make up a train amongst others that are in Tulsa. And then I want to go to Louisville. So I'll run 10 laps around the N-Track layout. And by the time I get back to the same facility, I'm in Louisville.
Magic.
And then, vice versa. The same bunch of trains may be going in the other direction. So it's 2 uses, 2 cities for the same yard.
Yeah. That's great. It's a good idea. Any other questions or comments? Did everybody get the poll? All right. Well, folks, thank you all very much for attending. Go ahead. I guess somebody was going to say something they didn't. Thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Again, next month, 9/11, Saturday. Same bat time, same bat channel for those of us who are old enough to remember that ad. And we'll see you then. And so we're going to shut this thing down. Thanks a lot. Have a good weekend. Bye.